I further request all dignitaries to come forward and take their seats on the dais. We would like to extend a hearty welcome to Srimati Nidhi Chibbar, IAS Chairperson, CBSE. Put your hands together for Shri Vishwaranjan Samal, IAS Additional Chief Secretary to the Government of Assam, Education Department, Dispur, Guwahati. A big round of applause for Shri Om Prakash, IAS Mission Director, Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, Assam, Guwahati. Put your hands together for Dr. Ram Shankar, Director, Training, CBSE, Delhi. A big round of applause for Professor Komila Thapa, Department of Psychology, University of Allahabad, Pragyaraj. Put your hands together for Shri K.K. Chaudhary, Ex-Director, Regional Office, Guwahati. A big round of applause for Srimati Rama Sharma, Ex-Director, Media and Public Relations, CBSE, Delhi. And finally, rounding up, we have Dr. Niroda Devi, PhD, Director, SCERT, Kahilipara, Guwahati.
Now I would like to request Sahodaya School Complex, Guwahati chapter to felicitate the guest. I would like to call Dr. N.K. Datta, President Sahodaya School Complex, Guwahati chapter, and also recipient of National Teachers Award 2022. And I would also like to request Mrs. Purnima Mehra, the Secretary of CBSE Sahodaya School Complex, Guwahati, to welcome the guests.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, ma'am. We are honored to have in our midst Dr. Ram Shankar, Director of Training, CBSE, and I would now like to request Dr. Shankar to come on stage and deliver the welcome address, providing us with his insights on the significance of guiding and counseling in modern education. I would also like to request Ms. Divyana Taryang to come on stage and provide the interpretation of the speech in sign language. Thank you.
Namaskar. Srimati Nidhi Chibbar ji, Honorable Chairperson CBSE, Sri Vishwaranjan Samal ji, Additional Chief Secretary, Department of Higher Education, Government of Assam, Dr. Om Prakash ji, Mission Director, Samagra Shiksha Assam, Sri K.K. Chaudhary ji, former Controller of Examination, CBSE, Srimati Rama Sharma ji, former Director, CBSE, Professor Komila Thapa ji, Department of Psychology, University of Allahabad, Dr. Rohit Dwivedi ji, Associate Professor, IIM Shillong, Dr. Mathili Hajarika ji, Associate Professor of Clinical Psychology, Guwahati Medical College and Hospital, Assam. Dr. Dimpy Mahantaji, Department of Psychology, Cotton University. Mrs. Pallavita Chaudhary ji, Counselling Services, IIT Guwahati. Mrs. Sajita Jadhav ji, UNESCO Delhi. Mamta Hojay ji, Director of Secondary Education, Assam. Nirda Devi ji, Director SCRT, Assam. Shri Chandrasekhar Azad ji, Deputy Commissioner, KVS Guwahati Region. Adit Prakash ji, Deputy Commissioner, KVS Shillong Region. Shri Rajesh Gautam ji, Regional Director, NIOS Regional Center, Guwahati. Officers, directors and other representatives from the SCRTs of remaining SCRTs from any region. CBSE Sahodaya Guwahati, principals, teachers, counselors, special educators, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to welcome you all in CBSE National Teachers Conference Guwahati. I also welcome all the participants who have been selected to share their best practices and experience with us. The idea of holding this conference on guidance and counseling was given by Honorable Chairperson Srimati Nidhi Chibbar ji. Madam used to say that young minds are always in need of proper guidance. A teacher who knows them inside out can only appropriately guide them and help them, facilitate them in making their own decisions regarding their mental and emotional issues and well-being. A teacher with school counselor skills can help children to identify their strengths and develop their interests. Honorable Chairperson's attachment and special attention is always towards the Northeast region. So in result, the conference is being organized in Guwahati so that the people from all corners of the country may come Northeast at Guwahati and meet the people here and connect with each other. The large number of people who have come here today is proving that decision taken to hold this program in Guwahati has proved fruitful. About 900 participants from 31 states and union territories and foreign schools have registered for this conference. I am sure this conference will truly exude the spirit and will be an immense success. I would like to thank all the dignitaries joining us today. We are grateful that you all have taken out time from your busy schedules. The conference will involve technical sessions where presenters will share their work and experience with us. This CBSE National Teachers Conference aims to bring together academics, psychologists, guidance personnel, counselors, teachers, special educators together to share and discuss both theoretical and practical knowledge about guidance and counseling in scientific environment. We have tried to keep this conference as interactive as possible. We are full of hopes that after this 2 days National Teachers Conference, you will return to your schools with some new learnings and positive chances. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We are also honored to have a special guest, Shri K.K. Chaudhary, the ex-director of CBSE. I now would like to invite special guest, Shri K.K. Chaudhary, to come at the podium and share his wealth of experience and wisdom with all of us.
Honorable Chairman, Srimati Nidhi Chibbar, CBSE, New Delhi. Samal sir, the Additional Chief Secretary. Om Prakash sir, the Mission Director of Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. Professor Kumila Thapa, who is a psychologist. Dr. Nirada Devi, the Director of SCERT. Dr. Ram Shankar, who is the Director of Training in CBSE New Delhi. Mrs. Rama Sharma, who is the Head of Information and Media Houses in CBSE. Respected principals, teachers of Assam and who are coming from all over the other parts of the country, the Sahodaya complex of Guwahati. Wish you a very good morning and welcome to today's inaugural program. Guidance and counseling has been in the heart of our chairperson, madam. Under her dynamic leadership, vision, and farsightedness, these guidance and counseling sessions, and then have been implemented as blooming flower. All over the world, these two words have been taken very, very seriously in all the schools, our entire education sector. Although they sound very similar, but there is some hairline differences between the two. While the guidance tries to bring out a solution, the counseling, on the other hand, tries and find out the remedial measures and further guidance. This program in Guwahati, especially our COE Guwahati, which have organized this program for all of us, wish that this becomes a grand success and you all will be participating in the coming sessions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shri K.K. Chaudhary. We are honored to have with us today a distinguished personality who has made significant contributions to the field of public service. It is my privilege to invite to the podium Shri Vishwaranjan Samal, IAS Additional Chief Secretary, Assam, to share his insights and thoughts with us.
Namaskar. Honorable Chairman, CBSE, Nidhi Chibarji, all the distinguished persons on the dais, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege to speak to you today. I am very delighted at the opportunity. It's amazing to see all of you coming forward to Guwahati from various parts of the country. And I would like to welcome you to Guwahati and hope that this conference will be very successful and it will motivate and inspire all of you to go back and contribute in the field of education. I will share one or two thoughts with you. Today, basically this is about anxiety. All of us go through anxious moments. And why should not it be otherwise? Because this is life. And as we confront the challenges of life, we are bound to be anxious. If you look at the human history and probably the history of life itself, the way consciousness has evolved, the way natural selection has progressed, the human beings are actually wired to move forward and face the challenges of life. And that anticipation of adventure has actually driven to the present state of our consciousness and civilization. It is not by accident. We are actually not wired to be happiness pursuing creatures. If we are left in a happy situation, after some days we'll get bored with it. We want constant adventure. And adventure in the face of challenges. What are the challenges? As you can see, there is war and conflict all over the country. The political situation, the political structure may collapse is collapsing in various parts of the world, and it may so happen in our situation as well. Sometimes the economic situation may collapse. There may be runaway inflation. We may lose our job. There may be illness and death in our families or whom we love. There may be disease. So we are subjected to all these challenges of life. So what could be our motive, our goal, so that it becomes worthwhile for us to move forward, confronting these challenges? That is one important thought which has driven the human consciousness over these years. If you think deeply about it, then what actually can drive us is our voluntary confrontation, our willingness to voluntarily confront to these challenges of life. What it will do is that it will make us powerful or strong or courageous as we go out and develop a goal for ourselves, find meaning in life, and make small progressions, and see the courage in ourselves grow. The problems of the world are not going to go away. They will remain as it is. They may become more terrible in future. But by choosing a path to confront the problems of life voluntarily, we are moving in a direction where we can confront them much better and in a much more meaningful way. That meaning has to be found by all of us in our own exploration, because we are sovereign human beings, we have sovereign thought, we have free speech, which thousands of years of civilization has bestowed upon us. And with whatever we have, we are called upon to move forward, to confront these challenges of life. And the psychoanalytic literature has shown that if there are two groups of people who are subjected to stressors, to situations which create stress, and one group is subjected to the stressors involuntarily, against their will, and the other group decides to take up those situations, stressors, willingly and confronts them, the group which does it voluntarily actually experiences positive emotion, and which does it involuntarily, it experiences negative emotion and stress. So therefore, the idea is that we move forward voluntarily and confront the challenges of life, and prepare and spread this message among the children, so that as a society we are not protecting them from whatever is going to confront them. Rather, we are preparing them. We are asking the courage in them to come forward and do those tasks. And as they move forward and confront the problems in a courageous way, and they see the success, or they see the courage in themselves, that will help them propel forward and will make our civilization achieve its success in its true form. So I would like to thank you for coming to Guwahati and organizing this wonderful workshop, wonderful conference. And I hope that all of you will go back with tremendous learnings from this workshop and implement what you have learned in future, and this will enable our educational system, our children to prosper. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. The keynote address is a pivotal moment in our program, and we are honored to have Professor Komela Thapa as our distinguished speaker. A retired professor of the Department of Psychology, University of Allahabad, Professor Thapa has trained as a clinical psychologist at the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, Bangalore. She has also completed her post-qualification training at the Institute of Psychiatry, University of London. Further, she has worked as a postdoctoral fellow at the J.P. Das Developmental Disability Center, University of Alberta. As a clinical psychologist, she has not only been providing professional services, but has also published research papers and books on various psychological topics. Respected educators, let us welcome Professor Komela Thapa and request her to set the tone for our conference with her insightful expertise.
It is indeed a great honor and privilege for me to be here on this occasion, and I feel very humbled in the presence of so many luminaries and dignitaries who are here. So I begin with thanking Dr. Ram Shankar for inviting me for this very prestigious conference, and I also welcome all of you on this occasion. And okay, thoda sa close. Okay, and and I am indeed honored that the chairman CBSC and many other dignitaries are present here today. So, as I said, I am mainly an academician and a practicing clinical psychologist. So, I would like to begin by talking about the significance of this day. As you are all well aware, and as has been already mentioned, 10th of October is celebrated as World Mental Health Day. And this is an opportunity for people and communities to unite behind the theme. The theme this year is that mental health is a universal human right. The aim here is to improve knowledge, raise awareness, and drive actions that promote and protect everyone's mental health as a universal right. So the assumption being made here, and this is by the World Health Organization, the assumption being made here is that mental health is a basic right for all people. And the point I wish to make here is that mental health conditions are also affecting increasing number of children and adolescents. So the main context of my study, of my presentation is schools. Okay, and schools are, I think all of us recognize, all of us believe that schools hold a very central place in the developmental agenda which is set forward for children and adolescents. Because school experiences, and I don't need to tell this to teachers, to all the august teachers who are present here, school experiences can promote developmental competencies in learning and achievement. They can also promote emotional and social functioning, but they can also bring about difficulties or problems in this area. Okay, so would you want to go on to the next one? Yeah, you need to move to the next slide. Okay, I finished the third slide also. Okay, now these are some of the basic ideas. If you give it to me, I think I'll move it. It will be better if I move it. Okay, back. Okay, thank you. Okay, so, okay, now what we will see over here is, and here I am citing the work of clinical psychologist, Professor Malvika Kapoor, who has done extensive work on school mental health. And she has pointed out that almost all children attend school, sometimes during their lives. Schools have a very profound influence on students. Young people's ability to learn and their motivation is influenced by their mental health, what is also known as well-being. Now, so schools therefore have the schools can also have a protective function. That means they are acting as a safe place, a safety net, and protecting children from the hazards of life. And schools are also very crucial in building and undermining self-esteem and confidence. Okay, sorry. I will just talk very briefly, and I would just like to remind you that this is all evidence-based. This is based on research studies which have been done. Okay, so we see that almost 16 years of age, there is some problem here. Okay, that children below 16 years of age constitute over 40% of India's population. So it is important to at least know the prevalence of mental illnesses in children and adolescents. Just to give you a point of comparison, Western studies have pointed out that between 12 to 30% of school-age children have moderate to serious problems, and approximately 25% of all 10 to 17-year-olds have poor motivation and academic failure. Now, I'll move on to this National Mental Health Survey, which was done in Bangalore, which was conducted at Bangalore. And this was in 2015 and 16. And this has very clearly pointed out that children and adolescents are vulnerable to mental disorders. The prevalence is in the age group 13 to 17 years was 7.3%, and it is almost equal in both genders. So these are really very staggering figures. What they are saying is in this survey, and please keep in mind this was done in 15 and 16, this was pan-India, they found that nearly 9.8 million 13 to 17 years are in need of active intervention. Okay, and the prevalence of these problems is much more in the urban areas as compared to rural areas. I will not go into too many technical details, but the most common prevalent problem was what I think all of us are very familiar with is depression and recurrent depressive disorder. Okay. These are some of the government initiatives. I don't think I need to elaborate on this because this is something you are all very familiar with. I will move on to talking about many problems which are affecting children, particularly because we are now in the post-COVID period. Okay. Now, what the WHO found was that in the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic, the global prevalence of anxiety and depression increased by 25%. Okay? And studies have found, as expected, higher levels of anxiety in children compared with the pre-pandemic period. If we look at a meta-analysis of studies, they found that the prevalence of anxiety in children and adolescents was 20.5%. Okay, so this is about anxiety. I will move on to talking about depression. Depression, as I think many of you are familiar with, it affects the individual's total functioning, quality of life, and more importantly, it is a very significant risk for suicide, which I will be coming to shortly, and also for self-harm. So there is increasing evidence that the COVID-19 pandemic has negatively affected the mental health of children and adolescents, with a significant increase in the symptoms of depression. Particularly children who, and I'm talking here about children who were not affected by COVID. So studies have found that as many as 22.6% of children who were isolated at home during the COVID-19 pandemic had symptoms of depression. There is also something which is known as post-traumatic stress disorder, abbreviated as PTSD. This can also affect children, and especially children who were isolated during the pandemic. They were found to be at greater risk for stress problems. So this PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, can lead to fear and anxiety. Okay. Very briefly, I don't want to give you too many technical details. Very briefly, I will talk about other behavioral and emotional problems. And because this will lead on again to something which is very important these days. Okay, now the stress which children were facing, and sometimes because they were isolated from school, they were not able to go to school, they were isolated from their peer group, this has interfered with the normal sleep patterns, leading to a significant increase in the number of people suffering from insomnia. So in children and adolescents, the prevalence of insomnia was 32% and 56%. And also what studies have suggested is that because children did not have a regular lifestyle, they had irregular sleep schedules, prolonged screen exposure, either watching TV or mobile or tablet or laptop or whatever. They also had fewer outdoor activities, and the lack of peer interaction, all these would contribute to sleep disorders. Now, very briefly, I'm going through this a little fast because I think time is also at a premium. Okay, age variations were also found. It was found that younger children had different kinds of problems. Younger children tended to cling to their caregivers. Okay, they were fearful, they were bored, they were lacking in cooperation, they were attention seeking, and they showed anxiety. Children between the ages of 7 and 13 tended to misbehave. They lacked attention, they required reassurance, and they also experienced academic problems. So the most important behavioral problems for older children or adolescents was anxiety, depression, poor behavior, poor attention, and impulsivity. And the reason why I'm raising these problems is that these problems are persisting. So very often people consult psychologists, or I think in schools you must have seen it yourself. These are persistent problems which can be explained in terms of their life experiences during COVID-19. Okay, now COVID-19 also brought about lifestyle changes. I think we all are familiar with lockdown. I think we all have experienced lockdown. And this severely affected the lives of children who were not affected by COVID-19. Schools were closed. I think, again, all of us know that very well. Actually, there was a drop in academic and intellectual performance because schools were closed. I, for one, believe that online teaching is not a substitute for face-to-face interaction with teachers. Okay, so school closure, social isolation, and also very, very important for children to interact with their own age group, with their own peer group. And all this can have a very negative impact on mental health. Nutritional status suffered, especially for children from certain disadvantaged backgrounds, because they were not getting the midday meal, which is again a very popular scheme in our country, and maybe a very important reason why some children go to school. And so it also had an impact on their nutritional status. Again, this is a major problem these days. Increase in use of screen time and social media usage. Okay, so screen time increased during the pandemic. During the pandemic, there was a very genuine reason. Teaching was online. Okay, so they were using more screen time was there. Social media usage also increased during the pandemic. Now, social media is not all bad. I think I need to emphasize that point, because social media is useful also. It helps children, adolescents, students to be in contact with each other. It helps in coping with anxiety and isolation. But as we are all very aware, there is something now known as mobile addiction, smartphone addiction, internet addiction, gaming addiction. All these can have a very negative impact on children's health. Okay. Now also there was, not only was there increased usage, there was also inappropriate use of social media, video games, and these have led to more emotional and behavioral problems, what was earlier referred to as delinquency or antisocial behavior, inattention, overeating. Also, I think this is again a very important factor these days. There is something known as cyberbullying. Okay? So cyberbullying is when on the internet you either troll a person or you bully the person, and this can also lead to mental health problems in the victim. And it also means that there is exposure. Increased screen usage means that there is increased exposure to violence or to sexual content. Smartphones, I think, will also be included here, so I think I will skip this and move on to something which is, I think, very, very pertinent, very, very relevant, very, very painful these days, which is youth suicide. And I think all of us are aware of what is happening around us. There is a lot of media attention. Perhaps the media is overexposing these cases. But suicide in youth will occur mainly because of a number of factors. There are genetic factors, psychological factors, social factors. All these factors are there. And suicide among youth has been and continues to be a public health crisis. Okay? And also, I think this is important, that suicide is the second leading cause of death among youth who are aged between 10 and 19 years. Okay, so when a young person dies, it is a major tragedy, not just for the family, for friends, community, but for all of us also. When we lose this very young and valuable member, potentially valuable member of our community, it is a loss for all of us. Okay. Now, what studies have shown, and I'll just like to highlight a few studies. What studies have shown is that there is evidence that youth who spend online and are using social media, this can influence suicidal behavior. But these associations are more complex. Okay. A systematic review has found, talking about social media and internet use, and linking it with suicide attempts in youth, they have found that that people or young people who who are more frequently on social media or make increased use of the internet, this was associated with increasing odds or increasing risk for suicide attempt. Okay. Another concern which is here, which is dealing with, I think I mentioned it briefly, is dealing with the media effect, the media contagion effect. You know, so suicide is like an illness; it becomes contagious. Okay, and this is dealing with the media's direct and indirect influence on youth suicidal behavior. I think some of us would be aware that the WHO has issued very, very firm guidelines regarding the reporting of suicide. So when you talk about a suicide case or you read in the newspapers about it, ideally the person's name should not be mentioned. The method used by the person should not be mentioned. Unfortunately, all these guidelines are bypassed in our newspaper. So I think whenever I pick up the newspaper, I always read that so-and-so, Jamna Pul se kood gaya. We have a, sorry, I'm reverting to my Allahabad origins, but Allahabad, I think all of you know, has very famous for the Sangam, the Ganga and the Jamuna, the meeting of the Ganga and the Jamuna. There is a Jamuna bridge, which apparently is a very popular site for people just jumping off and committing suicide. Okay, so this is the contagion effect also. And I don't know if you remember, a couple of years, a very famous film star, Sushant Singh Rajput, he committed suicide, and it was discussed on every possible TV channel, and every possible explanation was given, digging into his past, so was given. So this kind of media exposure is actually promoting suicide, and this needs to be addressed. Now, I will come, and this is for me the most important part. I would like to talk about youth suicide prevention. Okay? And what we will see is that actually schools are uniquely positioned to prevent youth suicide. Okay, so if we can find, or if we can evolve a comprehensive approach to suicide prevention, I'll talk about this very briefly, because I think it's not possible now to go into a whole suicide prevention program on this forum. But identifying students at risk, trying to help those students, and reacting appropriately to their emotional problems. Okay, so the school is actually what is my main thesis, or the main idea which I'm trying to assert is that the school setting is providing numerous opportunities for coming up with a program for suicide prevention, and especially for youth who are living in parts of the country where there are very few mental health resources. Okay, for example, I come from Uttar Pradesh, and I think Uttar Pradesh has, compared to many other parts of the country, Karnataka or Tamil Nadu or Kerala, has very, very few mental health resources. Okay, and the main idea is that when schools implement such a program, it is a culture in the school which is important. This is a culture of caring that encourages students to seek help, and also helps to promote connectedness among youth. And again, studies have shown that school-based awareness programs actually decrease suicide attempts. Okay. Now, I'll just talk briefly about the steps which are involved in suicide prevention. The first step, obviously, is dealing with prevention. So I'll talk about that briefly. How can we prevent it? And this can be done by using interventions that support mental health. Okay, so for example, in psychology, we have a movement called positive psychology, where you're not focusing on mental illness, you are focusing on people who are robust and hardy. You are trying to help people to develop healthy coping strategies, to remain connected with each other, and also encouraging students to seek help when they require this help. Okay, so there is then after prevention, so you have a lot of programs. Again, as I said, this is just a very, very brief overview of a very vast area. Then you have early identification. Okay, so you try to identify students who are at increased risk for suicide. Okay, I'm sorry, I haven't. Okay, so you try to identify students who are at increased risk for suicide. I will give some indicators. This is not a very comprehensive list. This is just to give you an idea about the kinds of, what are the warning signs of youth suicide. Okay, and also what studies have shown, that when you ask students about suicidal thoughts, it does not increase their distress, or it does not cause harm to them. Because earlier people were saying, if you talk about suicide, pushing the person towards suicide. But studies which have been done in psychology have clearly demonstrated that if you ask students about suicide, it does not really harm them in any way. Okay? And then, of course, so once a student is identified, what is important over here is that the student also should be given help. So the student would require more detailed assessment, also involvement of the family, involvement of caregivers, and help the student so that he or she can get care which is culturally appropriate. Okay, so I'll move on to the next slide. This is just to give you a brief idea about, and as I said, this is really very, very brief and very, very sketchy. So please don't take this as the final word as far as suicide is concerned. These are the warning signs of youth suicide. Okay, so it is not always possible to know when someone is thinking about suicide, but some of the warning signs are there. The student may be talking or writing about death. The person may feel trapped, the student may feel trapped, feels there's no way out, feeling hopeless, withdrawing from the family, friends, and community, increased drug and alcohol use, giving away his personal things, also self-harming or change in mood. Okay, I think one of the previous speakers has already spoken about stress, so I will not talk about stress because I think he's already mentioned some of the issues dealing with stress in young people. But I will move on to talking about triggers. Okay, so in these triggers, as you can see, these are the triggers. This is actually talking about stress, but these are some of the factors which may lead to suicide. This would include loss of an important person, so losing somebody in the family. Child abuse is very important. Bullying at school, sense of failure at school, relationship breakdowns, all these are very common factors which may act as a trigger for suicide. Now, what do we do when a person having suicidal thoughts? What can we as teachers, what can we do? The main idea, and I think this is something very simple, very central, but unfortunately not practiced, listen to what the person is saying. Talk to the person. Connect with the person. So you need to encourage them to talk, to let the student know that you are taking their concerns seriously. So you have to actually demonstrate what we call in counseling, because actually I'm not talking very much about counseling, but what we call in counseling warmth. You need to show warmth towards the person. You need to show the person or the student that you care. You have to acknowledge that they have certain fears, they have sadness. That means, I think we have a very common saying in Hindi, sab theek ho jayega, everything will be okay. That is a very dismissive way of behaving, of dealing with somebody who is having suicidal thoughts. So you need to provide reassurance to them, but you should not also dismiss the problem. Ask them if they are thinking of hurting themselves. Ensure that, I think here the family members' involvement is very important. Ensure that they do not have any access to any lethal weapon or medication. Stay with the person or ask the family member to stay with the person. Also seek professional help. This is also very important because unfortunately, again in India, there is a lot of stigma concerning mental illness. So people will not go to a psychiatrist or not go to a psychologist saying ki wo pagal hai, this person is mad. That's why I said, unfortunately, everything is pagal in our country. The person is mad or the person is insane. So you need to seek that professional support and advice. Okay, now I'll come to a slightly something more positive, and I know this is slightly long, but I would like to complete it. So this is talking about enhancing wellness and resilience in school. I had spoken earlier very briefly about prevention, mental health promotion. Okay, so there are many activities which can be done to enhance the protective factors and to decrease the risk factors. And again, schools are an ideal setting because they, in which you can promote mental health in children and youth. Okay, and I think CBSE has taken a step, a very positive step in this direction through their life skills training, because you are actually teaching children how to deal with life. So it is personal skills or life skills. And the approach which is most widely used is the whole school approach. So in mental health promotion, this is a very popular approach, which includes, as I said earlier, a positive model of mental health, and which emphasizes the well-being, not just illness, but well-being. This will also overcome what I had mentioned earlier, the problem of stigma, and it will help to create a climate, a culture that will promote, these are all counseling terms, warmth, empathy, positive expectations, and clear boundaries. I'm sorry for taking so much time. I would just like to talk briefly, I'm moving on here, about this concept of resilience. Okay, resilience actually is a core component of positive mental health. This is the ability to bounce back. You see, all of us are going to face problems in life. This is, I think, a given these days, that all of us will face ups and downs in life. We will have what the previous speaker had adverted to. We will face stressful situations. There will be problems at home. There will be problems at work. But we should be able to come back after this. We should be able to bounce back. And there are various ways in which children can be helped to manage these ups and downs of life. Okay? And children who are resilient, they have good feelings about themselves, they trust others, and they feel optimistic about the future. So school-based programs can focus on social and emotional skills and problem solving. And I will just briefly mention one of the most commonly, widely used techniques, which is known as mindfulness. I'm sure you have heard this term, mindfulness. It is a very current term these days. And this is, mindfulness is a popular meditation technique which is aimed at focusing on the present moment. So I don't have time to actually do an exercise on mindfulness, but it is focusing on what you are feeling at present. And it also involves learning how to pay attention and managing feelings and behavior. So this is now being very widely used. So growing numbers of teachers, parents, and children are reaping the benefits that learning mindfulness can bring. Mindfulness, by the way, is a Buddhist technique. And I will just point out about a few ways in which mindfulness can be practiced in the classroom. So you can actually start your class with a mindful moment. It will not take long. Sometimes mindfulness exercises are just 2 or 3. They just take a few, Maggi noodles, 2 minutes. This will take 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Okay? And in this mindful moment, what you do is before you commence class, you ask students to be silent, so this helps to slow them down. This also quietens their nervous system, because our nervous system gets very activated during stress. Okay? And this mindfulness activity can be done in stillness. So students are guided to sit in their place, to keep their feet on the floor so that they can feel the sensations, and just focus for some time, as I said, sometimes 2 minutes, 3 minutes, on what they are feeling at that moment. Okay, teachers can also ask students to pause. You know, there is a very old saying in English, count 10. Before you get angry, when you are very angry, count 10. So this is something like that, to take a pause. Okay, so for example, teachers can act as a model. They can take 3 deep breaths before they respond to what the student has said. So mindfulness is, as I said, very useful. It can help students to understand that if they have a calm mind and a calm body, they are more aware of their own thoughts and feelings, and this can promote empathy and compassion for others. You see, this is also very important, that you should feel the pain or the trouble of the other person. Also, with mindfulness, what you can see is that it leads to an environment where students are encouraged to self-reflect. You know, so I think in each session here also there will be something called, I was very pleased to see the program with something mentioned as reflections over here, but this also leads to self-awareness. And finally, I know this has been a long presentation, but I will just conclude with some random thoughts. I think all of you know this very famous Doha by Kabir Das, who says that the teacher is actually higher than God. So Kabir Das puts teachers on a pedestal which is higher than God. And I think I read this somewhere in the Indian Express, this statement that the teacher affects eternity. And what Ingersoll has said is that one good teacher is worth 1,000 priests. So at this forum and on this occasion, let us resolve to move forward to ensuring a better, brighter, and healthier future for the youth of this nation. Thank you for being so patient.
Thank you, ma'am, for your wonderful keynote. We are extremely honored to have with us today our esteemed chief guest, Mrs. Nidhi Chibber, an accomplished civil servant and chairperson of CBSE. May I request our esteemed chief guest, Mrs. Nidhi Chibber, to grace the event with her thoughts and insightful perspectives. Thank you. A big round of applause, please.
Shri Samal, Additional Chief Secretary, Government of Assam, SPD, Shri Om Prakash, the chief guest for this special guest, I must say, and our former colleague, Mr. K.K. Chaudhary, the keynote address, a very thoughtful speech we just heard from Professor Thapa, and my colleagues from CBSE, Director Training, Shri Ram Shankar, and till very recently our Director Media, Mrs. Rama Sharma, and all the principals, teachers, counselors, and the members of CBSE family who have traveled from around the country to be with us. Very good morning, though it's noon actually, and I must apologize for my role in delaying the program. I am sorry for that. But on behalf of CBSE, I warmly welcome you to this 2-day workshop on guidance and counseling in this beautiful city of Guwahati. It is heartwarming to see the enthusiastic response and participation of our school leaders, principals, teachers in this workshop, and it in a way underlines the importance of the subject which we have all gathered here to discuss. So thanks for participating in such large numbers, and special thanks to the Sahodaya chapter Guwahati for helping the board in organizing this event. And I'm told that the preparations have been going on fervently since the past few months, and the culmination which we are seeing today, a very well organized event. And I would especially like to thank the children. We heard a very beautiful rendition from them, so I think you should join me. Let us give them a big round of applause for that. It is very apt that we are holding this workshop. We are inaugurating this workshop on the occasion of the World Mental Health Day today, which we are meant to observe to mark the importance of mental health in our day-to-day lives. Increasing globalization, technological innovations, and a surfeit of information has helped us to progress towards a better and prosperous life, no doubt, but it has also brought with it challenges on how to cope with a rapidly changing world. Everyone is now expected to keep in step with the changes which happen every day, be it technological aspect of life, economic, social, and this inevitably leads to stress. To learn everything, to perform better, and not to be left behind. In the school system, it translates into stress to perform better than the peers, stress of not lagging behind the peers, stress of being labeled as dull and dim-witted. And this is not just in the field of academics, but in this information overload age that we live in, school children may experience stress from seemingly mundane things like physical appearance, like lack of communication skills, desire to fit in, desire to be popular in school. And all these problems get compounded in case of children who are already suffering from learning disabilities, who are suffering from some kind of abuse either at home or in school. Hence, the role of the teacher also now needs to expand beyond just providing teaching inputs to the students. A teacher can no more be a giver of knowledge, but also needs to be a good observer, an empathetic listener, and a trustworthy counselor to his or her students. And I'm sure that this experience sharing, which you're going to have during this workshop, will bring out the challenges which are faced by the teachers when they gear up for this role of a counselor for their students. And I'm sure you'll learn from each other on how to tackle them successfully. CBSE has long since mandated that every school should have a wellness counselor on its roll. And most of the CBSE schools follow this mandate. However, I propose that this trained specialist should actually be the second point of intervention. The first point of intervention necessarily has to be the teacher, who is interacting directly with the students and can at the first instance identify if a student is under stress. After that initial identification, there are a number of support mechanisms which are available, including the wellness counselor. But keeping this in mind, we have introduced a compulsory module in all our capacity building programs, which will sensitize the trainee teachers on the importance of mental health and wellness, irrespective of the subject on which they are getting trained. Because we believe that any amount of enhanced and specialized teaching and training in any academic area cannot be optimally utilized if the teacher is not attuned to the mental health of students in his or her class. And besides, we are taking a number of other initiatives and interventions. A specific capacity building program specifically on mental health and wellness is being prepared. We have been working with UNESCO, which has been promoting the health and wellness program in schools, wherein all the schools have been asked to identify 2 teachers to be the health ambassadors for their schools. And it's not only the teachers, we are also sensitizing children to identify the signs of stress in their peers. I'm sure many of your schools are a part of the Adolescent Peer Educator program, which we are undertaking with the help of an NGO. So what I'm saying is that we are trying to create an ecosystem in the schools which provides guidance, support, and counseling for our students, and in which everyone, right from the board to the school managements, to the principals, to the teachers and students themselves, have an important role to play, so that we can provide a secure, a supportive, and a joyful space for our students to learn and grow. So please utilize these 2 days to learn more about the subject from the specialist speakers whom we have invited here, about how your counterparts from different parts of the country provide mental health and counseling services to their students, interact freely with each other to incorporate best practices on the subject in your school. And I look forward to everyone's active participation and to the deliberations and discussions in this forum. Before I end, I must also emphasize that this session focuses on mental health and wellness of students, but by no means is the board, kind of not responsive to the needs of teachers. We are very aware of how much stress the teachers are also under, and I'm sure if you request our director training, he would organize a special event to discuss that particular thing as well. So here's wishing this conference all the very best, and I won't be here for the entirety of this conference, but I would surely go through the report which my training team will prepare, and hopefully come up with more responsive programs for our teachers and handhold you to guide your students better. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So, we have finally arrived at a pivotal moment in today's event. This would be the unveiling of the highly anticipated capacity building program manuals. These manuals serve as valuable resources for educators nationwide as we collectively work towards nurturing dreams and fostering brighter futures for our students. The training unit of CBSE has developed 11 capacity building programs for teachers, out of which 5 were developed with educational initiatives and 1 with Oxford University Press, while 5 others are developed by the CBSE resource persons themselves. I would like to address all of them one by one. The first capacity building program is competency-based assessment generic. I request the dignitaries to unfurl and release the manuals. The next is competency-based assessment English. Dear educators, these are the generic manuals, followed by the competency-based assessment English. Coming up next, we have competency-based assessment manuals in mathematics. This is followed by the competency-based assessment science. Next up, we have competency-based assessment, social science. We now move on to the next manual that's based on the National Curriculum Framework Foundational Stage, otherwise known as NCF-FS. The next manual focuses on active learning. Next up is the manual, a very critical manual on the theory of knowledge. Coming up next is the manual on storytelling as pedagogy. Coming up next is the manual on environmental education and conservation of natural resources. And last, but certainly not the least, the next manual is on educating parents about education. Thank you, dear guests. You may please be seated now. Center of Excellence Guwahati is the host of today's National Teachers Conference. And for this, I would now request Shri Jagdish Burman, Joint Secretary and Head of Center of Excellence Guwahati, to come forward and felicitate the dignitaries and guests, accompanied by Mrs. Purnima Mehra and Ms. Nabanita Sharma.